Hello, everybody. I'm really pleased today that I'm going to be talking to Professor Rob Wintemute. He is a Professor of Human Rights Law at King's College, London, and he's got a new book which seems to be extremely timely called Transgender Rights versus Women's Rights from Conflicts to Coexistence, which will be published by Polity Books on the 30th of May. So I'm sure we'll all be having a look at that. We might even review that in our book group, Rob. Hopefully, which will be a bit of a boost for it. Most importantly, of course, you are a trustee of LGB Alliance, so that's fantastic. So thank you very much for that. Now, look, Rob, you've already delivered a notable success for us in 2023 and for LGB people when you helped John Walker win his case in the Supreme Court in 2017. And you wrote to ministers to make sure that the UK government amended the exception in the Equality Act 2010 that allowed pension schemes to discriminate against same-sex couples, which was absolutely fantastic. And now you've turned your attention in a new direction. We're looking at fostering an adoption for gay people. And of course, it's absolutely brilliant news that there aren't any barriers for lesbians, gay men or bisexuals to be able to adopt in the UK. But that's not necessarily the case everywhere in the world. And I'd like you to talk to us about a case that you've identified abroad, and you've identified it as discriminatory. And I wonder if you could talk to us about that. Tell me what you found and what you're intending to do about it.
Okay, well, I'll start off by saying that in some cases, LGB Alliance is trying to defend our existing rights, such as the For Women Scotland case, where we intervened to try and defend the right of lesbian associations to exclude persons born male, and succeeded last week. But in other cases, we're trying to create new rights to establish equality for LGB people. And the opportunities are mainly outside the UK. We take for granted the rights that we've won here. But in the Council of Europe, there are 46 member states, and of those, only 22 have same-sex marriage. So,
wow,
still quite a long way to go. And so our first LGB Alliance's first intervention in a case in the European Court of Human Rights was one that was decided in January 2023, actually. Fidotova and others versus Russia. And there we argued simply that the European Court of Human Rights should say that every country, all of these 46 countries, must have some kind of alternative to marriage for same-sex couples. As we had in the UK from late 2005 until March 2014, our only option was civil partnership. And the court agreed. And so that's now an obligation across Europe. There have been follow-up cases in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Ukraine. So hopefully we'll see some new civil partnership type laws in those countries. Now, for our second intervention, we're turning to adoption. And here the case is called Bevin and others versus Czech Republic. And it involves two men in the UK who adopted a child jointly. So they both became the legal parents of the child at the same time. And they tried to get this adoption recognized in the Czech Republic because one of the two dads is a citizen of the Czech Republic. And the courts refused there. And now they've gone to the European Court of Human Rights. So when I saw this case, it didn't fit exactly into any of the prior cases, but I saw an opportunity to extend what we call the case law, the decisions of the European Court of Human Rights. Now, this is an area where you have to be very patient and look for opportunities to ask the court to take a small step. And I've been involved with this for around 25 years, you might say. Our first step was just getting the right to have custody of our own children. And we won that in late 99 in a case against Portugal's Salgueiro da Silva Mota versus Portugal. Next step was getting the right to adopt as an individual. And we got that in 2008, EB versus France. A lesbian woman in France had applied to adopt a child as an individual, and she had been deemed not a suitable parent because she was lesbian. And so we won that case. And then the next step was second parent adoption. And we won it in Austria in 2013, a case called X and Others versus Austria. But with the proviso that Austria already allowed it for unmarried opposite sex couples. So the court made a distinction. If the country voluntarily allowed unmarried opposite sex couples to propose to adopt each other's children, they had to do the same for same sex. But if they restricted second parent adoption to married opposite sex couples, then they did not have to extend it to same-sex couples. So we had these two contrasting decisions. 2012, Gazan Dubois versus France, lesbian couple were not allowed. The one woman was the genetic parent, the other was not, and the non-genetic parent was not allowed to adopt in France. In Austria, the case was successful. So that was the way things stood until 2022, when there was a success in a case against Switzerland. Now, the case involved, it was two men who'd had a child through surrogacy in the US, and the court had several decisions on opposite sex couples using surrogacy. And essentially, they applied those decisions to this case. So the child in Switzerland only had one parent, the genetic father. The father's male partner, who was a registered partner, was not allowed to adopt a child. And the court essentially said, and this is really a big breakthrough, that every country in Europe must allow second parent adoption if one of the parents is already a genetic parent or is a genetic parent. Yeah. So that's where we are with the case law. And it occurred to me that this Bevan and Others versus Czech Republic was an opportunity to extend the case law. Because in this case, the child has two legal parents in the UK, two adoptive parents, so neither parent is a genetic parent. And I can actually just quote from our third-party intervention.
Oh, great, yeah.
How we've argued this, because it's really what the principle that guides the court is the best interest of the child. And it's pretty clear that it's in the best interest of this child to have two legal parents in the UK and in the Czech Republic. So what we've argued is that failure to apply the same reasoning as in the case against Switzerland involving surrogacy would mean that children who are adopted are treated less favorably than children who are born through donor insemination or surrogacy. The children of same-sex couples who adopt should not suffer because their parents decided to provide them with the new home they needed rather than insist on a genetic connection with a child born through donor insemination or surrogacy. So, and it's a very strong argument because what is decisive for the court is what's in the best interest of the child. It's clearly in the best interest of the child to have a legal relationship with both parents, the both adults who are raising him or her, which is what was the basis of the prior decisions. In those cases, there was already a legal relationship with the genetic parent, but not with the non-genetic parent. But it's really a very small extension to say if a child has two non-genetic parents, the child has a right to a legal relationship with both of them.
I mean, small, but really significant, isn't it? And what's your sense about the likelihood of winning?
I think there's a very good chance because what you always have to check on when you take a case to the court or support a case is what is the majority trend in Europe? What are most countries doing? So if you're asking the court to order a country to do something that only a small number of countries are doing, it's really too sensitive, and the likelihood is that you will lose. So even a same-sex marriage case today would probably be unsuccessful. The court
Oh,
would say
wow. Because only 22 countries.
22
Yeah.
have it, 24 do not. So until we get at least to a small majority, it's unlikely the court would rule on that issue in our favor. But with when you're counting up countries where a child can have two legal mothers or two legal fathers, we're up to 25 countries. So we have the 22 countries with same-sex marriage, plus the Czech Republic, as of the 1st of January, has changed the law, plus Italy and San Marino. So 25 is a pretty good basis for the court, because they've ruled in similar cases with fewer countries in the past. So I think it's really quite a strong case. And if we succeed in this, it will decouple joint adoption from marriage. So it would mean all 46 countries in Europe would have to allow access to joint adoption, even if they don't allow same-sex couples to marry. Because when you think about it, this is the way it developed, at least in the state of New Jersey in the US back in the 1990s. If a country accepts adoption by an individual, which the Czech Republic does, and second parent adoption, which they have now done, it really would be, it's in the best interest of all concerned to have joint adoption, because it's quick. And so at the moment, the Czech Republic is saying, well, yes, we do allow the second parent adoption, but only if the first parent is a genetic parent. And that's what we're challenging. Why does that matter? How is that better for the child? It really makes no difference whatsoever. So if we can convince the court, this will be a big victory with regard to joint adoption. And then really the final frontier will be marriage, perhaps in a few more years.
That's funny. It feels really counterintuitive to me that the adoption precedes the same-sex marriage. I find that really surprising.
Actually, that is very interesting, because historically adoption has come either before marriage, at the same time, or after, depending on the country. And the UK is actually one of the countries where it came before. So the Adoption and Children Act 2002, which came into force in December 2005, around the same time as civil partnership, was 8 or 9 years before the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Act. In the Netherlands, you got marriage and adoption rights at the same time. We have a couple of countries, Belgium and Portugal, that introduced marriage without adoption rights. And then later they added the adoption rights. So it's really about politics in the particular country and what's considered a sensitive issue or not. Yeah.
And what sorts of timescales? How do in these courts? I'm imagining it moves pretty slowly, but perhaps I'm wrong. What timescales are we looking at?
It can move fairly slowly. A fast case in the European Court of Human Rights is generally 3 years. So this one, I think, might come up to 3 years next year. So if we got a judgment next year, that would be great. What really depends is, or what really determines how fast it goes is the number of cases against the particular country. So some countries have huge backlogs. Russia, from when it was a member, Ukraine, Romania, Italy, etc. So in those cases, with those countries, it's much slower, because there's a limited number of lawyers inside the court who speak the language and are able to work on those cases. But let's hope the Czech Republic does not have a backlog, which might speed up the case.
Well, look, we're in it for the long haul anyway, let's face it. So no, that's absolutely fantastic. So just to kind of wrap up for us, Rob, could you give us some reflections on, what will be the impact on gay people and gay rights more broadly if we're successful here? I'm saying we, obviously, it's you, but I'm going to take the credit for it. If we're successful, what do you think the impacts will be more broadly?
I think it will motivate a lot of countries, especially in Eastern Europe, to change their laws. The technically, a judgment against the Czech Republic doesn't apply to other countries. So if other countries want to be stubborn, they can say, we'll wait for a case against us. So that's what it can make it a slow country by country battle. But some countries will just say, okay, we see this is what's expected now, and we'll change the law. But I really think it would be significant to decouple joint adoption from marriage, because what some countries have done, like the Czech Republic, is they say, no, we're not going to allow joint adoption. That's reserved for married opposite sex couples, because they've just introduced a kind of civil partnership in the Czech Republic, giving all the rights of marriage except joint adoption. And it's almost like we want to we need to leave something out to show that you're inferior. And if we could get a decision saying, no, you can't leave this out, then that would speed up the process of achieving equality in many countries.
Rob, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for all your brilliant work and for explaining it so clearly to us here. So we will wait with bated breath, and I hope you'll come back before the judgment, remind us what's happening, and of course when it is announced we want to hear from you as well. So that's fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Rob, and see you soon. Thank you.
Definitely, my pleasure. Thank you.